Once again, the nation is reeling from two mass shootings. We hear calls for change. We ask, what will this time be different? The family of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is all too familiar with gun violence. The civil rights leader was assassinated in 1968. His eldest son, Martin Luther King III, posted this on Twitter on Sunday, quote, "I challenge each and every one of you to ask yourselves, is this the America I want to live in? It's up to us to ignite change. It's not easy work, but we all have the ability within us to build a more loving community. We must act before it's too late." Martin Luther King III joins me now. Sir, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
You are prescribing a solution to the problem that we're in right now that talks about undercutting the hatred that is behind some of these killings, not other things, not necessarily gun control, not necessarily mental health, or as the president said today, video games, but the idea that there's a hatred that's being fueled that is manifesting in gun violence.
Well, certainly, let me first say that my prayers go out to all of the family members and friends of victims who have been lost in these two tragedies, actually three if we count the one in
Gilroy, California.
California. But enough really is enough, and I think our nation has to act now. It was certainly good to hear the president talk about racial tolerance, but it's a tone that has to be set by him and others. And it really means action. There are two bills we know that the House passed, and the Senate has refused to take action on it around gun violence. That would be just a first step. Ultimately, yes, it is love in the hearts and minds of many throughout our nation, but there must be action first.
When you say what kind of America should we want to live in, it is kind of remarkable that these days this has been a thing that America is associated with, the idea that we have repeated mass shootings in this country.
Yes, it is. It is not or should not be indicative of what this nation is and represents to us as well as many around the world. People come to our shores because there has been opportunity. But there now seems to be a spirit of fear that is promoted. Over 20 years ago, my wife worked to pull together a summit around hate crimes. And tragically, we need those kind of things today. Bring a coalition of people together to talk about how do we reduce hate. The best of America we are not seeing. We end up seeing what is the worst part of who we are. Now, interestingly enough, these tragedies do bring our communities together. But being together is okay, but action is what is needed. And so there must be a mandate. And that leadership has to come, or should come, from the president. If the president is not able or refusing to act, the people must demand that the president acts and Congress acts, the United States Senate specifically. We can do better.
As President Obama just tweeted out.
We obviously are not at this time.
President Obama is just in that tweet. He said, all of us have to send a clarion call and behave with the values of tolerance and diversity that should be the hallmark of our democracy. We should reject language coming out of the mouths of any of our leaders that feeds a climate of fear and hatred or normalizes racist sentiments. Leaders who demonize those who don't look like us or suggest that other people, including immigrants, threaten our way of life or refer to other people as subhuman or imply that America belongs to just one certain type of people. The President Obama, is in this making a reference to the language we have heard from President Trump. He's not saying his name, and he's probably closer than I've heard him come to being directly critical, because generally speaking, former presidents don't do that. But basically, he is articulating that leadership from the top in this country is not preventing this, it may be fueling it.
Well, I would have to say that it is certainly my point of view, as well as many others, that feels exactly like what is happening. And division and hatred, and those seeds are sown deeply. and others decide to capitalize on what they've heard and carry out what they've heard. That is not the way that we as Americans have dealt with crisis. I think in my family particularly, we've always used the method of nonviolent methodology. Our society has allowed a culture of violence to exist. We have got to find a way to embrace, I believe, a culture of nonviolence. And that has to be taught. People have to demand that we want nonviolence in our schools. A school zone should always be a safe zone. No child should have to worry about going to school and feeling that he or she may be blown away by someone bringing a gun. We need to ban assault weapons. Why does anybody need an assault weapon? These are very simple things that could be done with the stroke of a pen, but obviously there's been a great refusal at the highest levels of power in this country. That must change.
Martin Luther King III, thank you for joining me today, sir.
Thank you.